Hey, so here we are. We're going to talk about the state of play.
So there's always a bit of a dichotomy between the first week and the second week. It's just got a different flavor. And in different COPs, it's been done different ways. It depends on when the high-level state officials arrive at COP. Sometimes they come the first week and they say their canned speeches and thank you very much and I'm so proud of my country and the rest of you need to step it up. Sometimes they do that in the first week. And then the professional negotiators who have been following their tracks day in and day out for years get down to negotiations. Other years, the first week has been kind of a level setting of the professionals, and then the high-level people show up the beginning of week 2. Rational minds could differ about which one is better. Sometimes you want the heavy hitters to come in and reinforce something that's already in motion. Sometimes they show up at the beginning of the second week and derail processes that are already in motion. I think it's a little too early to decide which one this is, but it is Tuesday of week 2 and they just showed up yesterday. So it will be the second option. It will be whatever comes of them coming in later in the process to do whatever it is
they're going to do. Yeah, it was pretty remarkable. It was like in Texas we get a wind, the weather changes and suddenly everything looks different, everything feels different. Yesterday, the suits showed up, and everything felt different, including in the high-level plenary when, just as the temperatures were starting to rise in the plenary, the thunder and the lightning exploded, the rain started pouring down. There was water coming in under the walls and in through the windows. It was remarkable. At one point, I thought the electricity maybe was just going to straight.
It did flicker.
It did flicker.
We are definitely in the Amazon. There is a sense of place for this entire COP.
And it was interesting that in the Pope's message, he said, we're having thunderstorms and we're at flooding, and we were all like, oh yeah, we know, we're right here. So the first order of business for week 2 is high-level national statements. This is where each country gets its 2 or 3 minutes, however long it is, to say its piece into the process. Often these national statements have some pretty defined themes. Might be, we've been doing really well, working really hard, everybody should do more like us. Might be, we are disproportionately impacted and we don't have that many emissions, and yet we found creative ways and we're punching above our weight. Sometimes that national statement might sound more like, this is existential for us, come on you guys. This year, the European Union spoke early on and they immediately said, carbon markets, for real though, carbon markets. That was their main point, was there is not a way to get to 1.5 without getting real serious about putting a value on carbon. And around the world, people are experimenting with that, and they are saying more, better, faster. The most impacted countries, which are generally in the global south, are, in one way or another, always working their way around to more finance for mitigation, more finance for adaptation, more finance for loss and damage. It's all important. You don't get to pick one over the other. The other thing that has been, from time to time, really affecting for me, and the guy from Tuvalu was the one, the guy from the Marshall Islands was the one who told the story. He said, in the Marshall Islands, we have a cultural practice when a baby is born of burying the umbilical cord of the baby in the family's land so that it's a permanent recollection that no matter where that baby goes when it grows up, it is tied literally to the land. He said, what's that going to mean? when that land is underwater and anybody live here anymore. That for me was really heartbreaking, and just a reminder that, as the woman from AOSIS has said and others, 1.5 isn't just a slogan, it's about survival.
And those high-level discussions are spoken in very diplomatic language. We were talking the other day about how diplomacy is its own foreign language, and it is what allows for this process to go forward. And most of us, once we learn it, are grateful for it. So it's remarkable when that language is abandoned in negotiations. So I follow the loss and damage track, and yesterday, the negotiators from the Arab group have decided that loss and damage finance is their red line in the sand, and in diplomatic language and not so diplomatic language, threatened to derail the program. And it's remarkable to me that they care so deeply, that the African group was in general agreement, and that is extending across multiple negotiating rooms over multiple sessions. This is a plot point I am going to be following until the very end. And as a faith community, we helped establish this fund for loss and damage.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say.
We have a vested interest in seeing this thing established, seeing it run well, making sure that the most vulnerable communities are able to access the fund. And so we are receptive to any ideas that would be helpful to bringing that fund into its full fruition. But if on day one of the negotiation of the text you are threatening to come to a no decision, which is what was said, we are fully willing to invoke Rule 16, and I'm like, what? That is a bold statement on day one of actual text negotiation. So we'll be following.
Like a point of order.
Right. So as somebody who is intimately involved in that process, that is something that I am going to be watching. And it was in such sharp contrast to the high-level diplomatic niceties that were happening in the plenary rooms.
We did see at the very end of last week hints of fracturing in the negotiation of the language. My personal favorite was the country that kept objecting to text because the opening bracket wasn't there. And so, I mean, I do think there's some tension around language that we're going to just hear more of as this week goes on. But it will be a shame if all the work that got done in week one around that new multilateralism, all that bridge building with civil society, all the talk about subnationals, if all that gets blown up over countries trying to show who has the biggest shoulders, that's going to be a shame, because there's a lot of work that's been done here that's really good work. Speaking of really good work, some of us have had some work done.
Some time off work done.
Time off. I'm just happy to report that I got, this is not a permanent tat. It is an indigenous henna-like situation, but the woman who did it, the women who do this particular application put their hands in the dye, and their hands are just completely covered with it, and then they use a little palm leaf thing to paint it on. It was astonishing.
This COP has a real sense of place. Mm-hmm. I've been to other COPs where once you're in the venue, you could be anywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe you're a little cold in Baku, maybe you're a little warm in Egypt, but we are in the Amazon, and as you stated, it's raining inside here, but there's henna and there are the local indigenous costuming, and it feels like we have been to a place. And so on that front, I'm grateful to the COP Presidency and to the nation of Brazil for bringing us to this place. But also, we are in a place that we walked through at least a quarter mile of military encampment this morning.
We did. We did. The military presence is shocking. When I went to the Paris COP in 2015, that COP happened a week after the bombing. And everyone knew that there was this real heightened sense of concern about security. And we did see armed guards out on the streets of Paris, and there was a little bit of a watch your step. But I'm telling you, we've been passing, I feel like it is fair to say, hundreds of military police armed to the teeth. There's military vehicles. There were police with riot gear and tear gas canisters.
And we're told this is in response to indigenous protests. And I'm personally very sensitive to the use of black and brown bodies as the explanation or excuse for militarization and the threats of violence. So I'm leery to accept that as being the rationale for things being as they are. This is still open to civil society. This is still supposed to be an open place of negotiation and liberté and fraternité in that vein. And I wonder, as we talk about the vibe shift that goes from one week to the next, what does armed encampment mean for the ability to negotiate with one another in good faith across legitimate differences of opinion coming from around the world?
Right. Well, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because it makes it seem like this place must not be safe, or all these guys with big guns wouldn't be standing around looking scary. If it's not safe, we shouldn't go, Regina. We should stay home. And that's not a good message. So, hoping for a little bit less militarization going forward into future COPs. Really enjoying the multilateral conversations. Really curious how that new multilateralism holds up now that the guys in suits have entered the building.